What's up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee, and this is going to be a fun Wealth Wednesday with my co-host, Stacey Tisdale.
Happy Wealth Wednesdays, everybody. We have a mid-year financial checkup with the Budgetnista.
First of all, can't believe it's the middle of the year already. Can we talk about that? So, yeah. But that also means you still have the rest of the year to reach your goals.
Exactly.
So what should people do if they're kind of afraid, it's mid-year? Where do they start when it comes to taking stock of their financial goals?
Well, first things first, Stacey, I want you to revisit what your goals were in January.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like everybody wrote stuff down. Maybe you journaled. Maybe you did a vision board. Maybe you just started out. So revisit what those goals are. See if they still align. Because maybe you had a goal of I want to buy a house and it just doesn't make sense now. But maybe you had a goal, I want to save $1,000 and it still makes sense.
Right.
So what were your goals? How far or how close are you to accomplishing them? If you're still pretty far, map out the rest of the year of what do I need to do to get there.
Okay.
You know, so like let's just say your goal was I want to save $1,000 and you're at 200. Well, what do we have to do to get those to the 800 month by month by month? Break it down. Work backwards.
You know, they always say don't beat yourself up, but I do know. And I'm not just talking about myself, but a lot of times we set these goals and then we do things that we know are not aligned with reaching those goals because it's not sometimes easy, the willpower that you have to have to be able to achieve goals. Like you'll be like, I want to buy a house, but I'm still acting and doing things like shopping and, you know, making purchases and going out to eat and going on vacations and doing all of the things that won't align with me trying to save up that money.
You always say being clear on your goals helps.
But also, too,
that.
get you an accountability partner. You out here by yourself. Why?
True.
Like, tell your sister, your bestie, your work hubby, somebody who's going to be like, oh, we out here again? Oh,
Like, there's another Patience?
But someone who is going to gently motivate you but keep you accountable. And then create like an accountability check-in, right? So it might be monthly, but you're also helping them check in. Maybe it's weekly. So you set your goals, you share them, and then you check in with your accountability partner because it's really going to help you. I mean, no one is perfect, but knowing that someone's going to ask you about it is really going to motivate you to stay on track.
Or lie.
I'm glad you said that.
Right? You know, because spaving is a big thing that we were talking about because sometimes, you know, spaving is like when you spend money to save money, but really you're just spending money you don't need to spend.
Yes.
And so you might be like, oh, there's a big sale. I could save $500 on this, but you don't even need it, but you think you're saving money, but you're spending money on something you don't need because it's on sale. I'm a spaver and I'm aware, but I'm trying to get...
Some people save to spend, meaning that like, they'll say like, oh my goodness, like I saved this $200 and then they spent that $200. It's like the savings never stays.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so the key for that though is you have to make your money inconvenient because inconvenient money gets saved. Like I do not put my spending money and my saving money at the same bank.
Okay.
So my spending money goes to my convenient bank, which is like the brick and mortar banks outside. Swipe your debit card, you know, the ones we see outside. My savings money goes in an online only bank. Because she is stingy. And if I want to spend her...
You got to jump through hoops.
What? You got to make that transfer 24 hours before it's available, blah, blah, blah. So it makes my money inconvenient.
That's a good idea.
You know,
That's
it
a
slows me
great
down
idea.
a little bit. Like,
That's a great idea. I love the accountability partner because I got a stat.
Yes.
If you write down your goals, tell someone... you are, it's like 98% more likely to achieve them. It's huge. And
check in. And here's the thing. I mean, y'all like to tell your business on social media anyway. If you don't have someone to do, make social media your accountability partner.
Right. Y'all like to post yourselves in the gym.
I mean,
post your goals, your savings goals.
For real, but imagine doing that. You're just like, hey guys, I want to save $1,000. You know, by the end of the year, every month, I'm gonna check in with y'all, and then that way, people will start to ask you. I thought you had said that you were like, where are we at? Screenshot, please.
Yeah.
You know, and so just finding people that are gonna hold you accountable, but gently accountable, because we're not looking for people to beat us up.
Break it down. So if I see I'm really falling short, what are some steps I can take? And you also talk about it's so important to prioritize.
No. So here's the thing that, like, if we're talking about saving in particular, one of the best places that you can save is currently internally, meaning like you don't have to necessarily make more money. Not everyone. Sometimes you just have to look at what are you currently spending. There are literally apps. So I just swore up and down that I didn't have any of these like monthly payments that I was making that were unnecessary. So there are apps that will look through and find all your monthly payments or your regular payments. Child, it was like a few $100s a month. I forgot about that.
Listen.
I had signed up for Hinge. Child, you know, I got me a man now. What am I doing on
We're
here?
going to get to that in a second.
We are gonna get to
You know,
that.
and I was like, wait a minute now, $79 like every 3 months or whatever. Literally, I just canceled it.
Did you
know?
meet him on Hinge?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, and so I
get
just was
to
like,
that.
Make sure. I just want to
yeah, no, but I mean, you know, I tried.
You're
to-
right, though.
You know, but I didn't know that, and I thought because I had deleted it, I had not canceled it, and there was a bunch of things like that I had not canceled.
Oh,
I
so
have a
many
storage. I have a
subscriptions.
storage that I'm like, I need to go get my stuff out of storage
Yes.
at this point because before I moved into my new house, I was like, let me just put some stuff in storage just to like, you know, I was dealing with a lot of different things, and I'm like, I got to go get this stuff out of storage at some point.
Yes.
Because I don't need to be paying this. It's expensive.
Yes, and then
That's
you,
very
and then when
expensive.
you really add it up, when I added up, it was like a few $100s a month. Think about that. That's thousands a year.
Yeah,
What could
it
I do?
is.
That's a vacation.
That is. I put a mattress in storage because I had like got an extra mattress. I got a mattress, you know. Anyway, I could have bought a new mattress. But the amount of money I done spent putting this mattress in storage.
Yeah.
What was the point? You know.
Because the thing is, it's really out of sight, out of mind. So when you put things in storage, you just don't see them.
So steps, prioritize. For a lot of people out there, a huge pain point is student loan debt,
Yes.
especially with the resumption of payments,
Yes.
interest rates going up in July. And in case anybody didn't notice, it's kind of an interesting moment in politics.
Yes.
And we now have the vice president as our nominee for president.
Yes.
Who you were with recently?
I
You
was.
were with-
I had to take my talk show with her.
Can you
Okay,
tell
talk
us
about
what-
that.
yeah.
Give us the dirt. What was it like? What have they done?
got
What's
dirt?
she gonna need
No,
for
that's
student
funny.
loans? This is Tiffany's. I'm gonna shut
Well,
up.
your
Preach.
girl, I've been invited to the White House, Capitol Hill, and then most recently I was invited to the vice president's residence. And it was for Black business leaders. It was a reception. It was in connection with the Black Chamber of Commerce, you know. So anyway, I went, and she really just talked about ways that this administration has helped Black businesses, and like from giving $7 billion to HBCUs, you know, to we've had I think right now we have the lowest rate of unemployment in the Black community,
Yes.
according to them. You know, have created more Black jobs, have. Though we know the wealth gap is still ridiculous,
Right.
But they have infused more Black wealth than any other president. I think even presidents combined. So these are just some of the things that she talked about, and I just was like, so she's actually on an economic empowerment tour that hopefully your girl will be on too. And little T.
I can see it. I'm with it.
But then the week before that, I was invited to a congressional briefing, which I didn't know what that was, if I'm being honest. And that is when members of Congress say, we want to brief you, talk to you about something important. So we've all heard, hopefully, of Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Massachusetts,
Yeah, from Senator Chuck Schumer, you know, from right here in New York. He's a Senate Majority Leader. I'm also Senator Warnock. And Representative Ayanna Pressley. She's a beautiful woman.
Yep.
You know.
We know Ayanna Presley.
Right? And so they were like, we want to talk about student loan debt relief. And so I didn't realize. So there's like 300 million plus Americans in America, and 43 million of them are affected by student loans, at least federal student loans. So this doesn't include
Federal, yeah.
all
Private,
student loans,
right.
right? And so like the president actually had a plan that was going to help about 40 million of them. And every step he has been like staved off. Like so much so that the Supreme Court got in the mix. It was like, you tried it, trying to help people, not here. And even then, he went through the Department of Education.
He's gone around
Yeah,
it
he's been,
beautifully.
but
He's
even
gone around it beautifully.
And it's important to know because some people that aren't understanding are like, well, I still pay my student loans. He didn't keep his promise.
That's not
but
true.
to understand that this is not a dictatorship.
Yes.
And he can't just magically wave his wand. He's done the best that he could to try to keep that promise.
yes,
But
and
there are
5 million
definitely
people have been helped.
Yeah.
Right.
5 million, and that's because it got stopped. You know, 5 million people. So there was a statistic that they shared with me that blew my mind. They shared that that for white borrowers, 20 years after graduating college and with their paying on their student loan, that for most white borrowers, or the average white borrower, they will still owe about 6% of the original amount that they borrowed. So 20 years later, do you know for Black borrowers in particular, 20 years after starting to pay down their student loans, they owe 95%.
Whoa. It's like they didn't pay anything for 20
I was
years.
just like, why?
Yeah,
But
Black women, it's even crazier.
yes. And so like that's why student loan, because you ask yourself, why are they blocking student loan debt relief? Because it helps middle class workers, it helps public service workers, it helps women, it helps especially people of color, older Americans. 20% of all federal borrowers are over 50. imagine being super grown. It's like, it's been,
And you still have student loans.
I mean, so like, but this is why the people that you vote for, I know when it's perfect, but the people that you vote for is critical because truthfully, the racial wealth gap, part of it is home ownership, but also part of it is student loan debt.
Right.
And the history of, it's terrible when education used to get paid with Pell Grants.
Yes.
And it was blacks couldn't get Pell Grants. That was just part of the Jim Crow laws.
Can
It
you
was
imagine?
crazy. But I'm glad you talked about this because we had your girl Lynette Cox on
I love her.
a couple of weeks ago, and there were so many comments. Biden didn't keep his promise on student loans. Biden's raising inflations. Biden's doing this with interest rates. And I'm like, there's such a knowledge gap.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
people will tell you that they haven't done a great job of explaining everything
They
that
haven't.
has been done.
That's the truth.
And that is quite unfortunate. And that the other side has done a great job of making it seem like
Yes.
nothing has been
Yeah.
done.
And I
So
think that's why they
everyone's
had to,
not going to go do their own research.
They're not. And that's why things like this are important, right? This is why, when they invited me, they were like, honestly, Tiffany, they asked us, it was 6 creators they invited to this congressional briefing. And one of the questions they asked is, how can we get more information out there?
Right.
And
How
the-
can we let people know?
Yes. And I was like, you have to invite more people in to share on platforms in ways that make sense, to share on platforms so people can hear. So things like this. This is why I was like, you know what? Like, so there is, if I applied, because I used to be a school teacher, so I applied for, we all know the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We've all heard of it. Like if you work for federal, state, or local, government or whatever. So I was denied it. And largely people were denied just because of like clerical errors, nothing that they did wrong. So since it was in its inception in 2014 till 2020, so how many years is that? Like 16
6.
years, right? Only 7,000 people. So that's like what was that?
Wow.
Like 7,000 people were able to get their loans forgiven through that program. But during this presidency, they went in, they said,
reformed it.
yes, and 942,000 people in the
Wow.
last 4 years.
See, and who knew?
Nobody's
that,
talking
yeah,
about
nobody's
that.
talking about
Nobody's
that.
talking
Isn't that
about
crazy?
that.
Some of the stuff, like remember Betsy DeVoe? Remember that was like a big thing when she became the
were like,
education,
how?
right? So under her watch, the income driven repayment program. So there's this income driven repayment plan where it was supposed to also, like, if you've been paying for 20 or 25 years worth of payments, like it was supposed to also help with cancellation. Do you know, since it was started in the early 2000s, so it wasn't just her, but and only 32 people got their loans forgiven.
32 people.
32.
Not 32,000.
Yes.
32 people.
And under this administration, 1 million borrowers in that short period of time.
I'm
relative-
so glad that they are.
Well, let's
putting
make sure we
voice to it
elevate
with
that
people.
message.
Yes, because I'm just like, so there is a lot of red tape that's been purposely placed in place to stop people from getting relief.
And when people ask, well, why is this something, how is this something that directly helps Black people? Because I know another thing that we talk about a lot is what is the Black agenda to help
Yes.
Black people? And while this isn't only specifically helping Black people, it is a lot of Black people that will benefit.
Yeah, because first of all, 2/3 of student loan debts are women have 2/3 of student loan debts, and then also too, like I just
You said
shared,
our women.
yeah, are like women just in general,
Yeah.
right? But then to know that 20 years from now, the likelihood is that you could still owe all that you borrowed because as a person of color, as a Black person. So imagine what life would look like if you had that student loan debt like eliminated. Imagine the house you can buy, the children you can have, the
investing
business
you can do.
Exactly. And so like, because they tell us.
And the stress that also
I
causes
mean,
on top of everything else.
I know a woman who is going to save $1 million in student loans. She's a doctor, went to medical school, took out hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt, and she said by the time she was finished paying it off, it would have been probably close to $1 million just because of interest. Compounding. And she got her student loan debt forgiven. She was in tears.
Life-changing.
She said, I can have a family now. Maybe I can buy a house.
People were putting off having
Yes.
families, getting married, deciding
Absolutely.
not to have kids because of student loan debt in
Yes.
this country.
We got to pivot a little bit here. I know Stacey was getting ready to do it.
They got to do all about
I know
business.
we're pivoting. We have a vision and point. Just one quick tip. What should entrepreneurs do for their mid check-in? And then we're pivoting to where we want to go.
So as an entrepreneur, 2023 was rough. It was almost no Budgetnista, y'all. Because it was a really rough year.
2024 has been about recovering for
Yes.
2023 for most of us.
And so one of the things that I did right was that I had 6 months of emergency savings. And so if you are halfway through the year as a business, I want you to look and say, how much does it cost to run my business? And get yourself as quickly as you can to 6 to 12 months. Microsoft has 12 months. And ask yourself why. Because it will give you 6 months to a year to figure it out. So by the end of 2023, I had 1 month left. So it took me 5 months to turn the company back around. But imagine if I only had 3 or 2 months. Honestly, I just would have paid out of pocket. I would have to take from Tiffany's fund to fund the Budgetnista. And so number one thing as an entrepreneur, because we don't know what the future holds, is to look to see how much does it cost to run your business, how much do I have set aside for savings, and just to look to see, are there other places that you're kind of wasting money? It might be time to let some people go, because I don't like to let people go during the holiday season. So now is the time, if someone is not doing all that they could do, now is the time, so they can have, in September, there's a big hiring push in September. And so like now's the time, if you just know someone is not performing, you give them the chance to find something in September.
And you mentioned CDs as a good place to do your emergency savings.
So as a business, so the bank that I bank with, which I'm not saying because they don't pay me, that they have programs that I asked them, I said, because it costs 7 figures to run my company in 6 months, right? And so I'm like, I don't want to just sitting and checking. Right. And at first they were like, oh, I don't know. And I was just like, no, you know. And so I kept bugging them. They finally were like, well, we have these business CDs. And I think it's like 4 or 5%. So imagine 7 figures earning 5% in 6 months. That's just sitting there.
That's amazing.
And then there's another program that they had that we're vetting, because your money should be working.
Yeah,
even
I
if
always say
saved.
that my money's got to work. It can't just sit there lazy.
Yes, but
as
you also want
inflation's working.
But you also want it accessible. Because you want that if you're actually in an emergency. So what I like to do is I would keep, if I have 6 months and there's a 3-month CD, I would keep 3 months out, put 3 months into a CD. That way, if something happens, I have access to 3 months, and when the CD matures, I have access to the rest.
Okay, now, Tiffany.
Oh, Lord.
We did follow your journey, and a lot of people saw what you went through. Again, it was very unfortunate. We sent you a lot of love. And
I felt it, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. When your husband passed. But you did mention after, and that was 3 years ago, but now you have found someone, like you said, you're off of Hinge, so you had to not just delete the app, but also unsubscribe.
Yes.
So you're not
unsubscribe. Good
you
point.
can't.
I was paying for love I wasn't looking for. Yes.
And you being the Budgetnista, there's a lot of things that we talk about when it comes to being in a relationship and money. So tell us about what this journey's been like, and what it was like for you starting with someone new, and what kind of conversations you had.
So in the beginning, I said, because the loneliness, at first I was just looking to kind of fill the void. Like, I just want my phone to ring. That's what I would say. Because I had such a good relationship with my husband. He was my best friend. We talked, we laughed. And I wasn't even looking to date other than just male energy that I could talk and laugh with. Date whoever you want, because I'm not trying to be your one. And I made it very clear. Which was strange, though, is that everybody wanted to wife up. I'm like, where was you when I was 28, 30, trying to get wifed up? Now, you big grown men want to be like, no, I want you to be my girl. I was like, I'm not interested. And I wasn't, because nobody can compare.
Right.
But it took a lot of therapy to realize that I'm not looking for a replacement. No one is ever going to compare. Ever. That it can still be good but different. And so I just opened myself up to like dating more intentionally. And it's actually somebody I knew from some years back. Like, I want to say I probably met them like 15 plus years ago. And we kind of used to run in the same circle. And then, we've been cool, but, I never thought, I thought he was handsome, but black men are handsome, but I never thought of him that way.
Right.
But then his grandmother actually lives around the corner from me, and that's how we reconnected.
Okay.
Because he had asked me a question about something. She'd sold her house, she'd made some money from it, and then he just reached out to say, what should she do? And I said, well, I'll just walk around the corner to see Granny and talk to her. So then we reconnected, and we honestly just started with walking.
Okay.
We would just walk and talk, because like I said, I wasn't interested in like deeper partnership. And so as a result of that, we really developed like really enhanced like the little bit of friendship that we already had. And so it was nice not to have to explain myself to someone or to like, for people, because when I was on the apps, every once in a while, somebody would say, Budgetnista, and I'm like, block. Not up in here, sir. Because I would put on the app, so like, I'm a teacher. Right. They're like, girl, I know who you is. I'm like, so it was nice not to have to worry about like, is this person here?
Right, for what?
Yeah, for what? But even with him, I thought about that too. Okay, how could you not? But what really won me over is that I remember we were talking one day. I used to like literally almost walk every day and cry. Like I was just call it my daily walk and cry because I just miss my husband so much. And he called me one day and I was like, I don't want to talk right now. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, walking and crying, minding my business. He was like, you can walk or cry with me. So he stayed on the phone as I just cried and walked. And I thought, okay. And he told me one time that like I was bringing up Jarrell's name a lot. And I just stopped myself. He said, no, you don't ever have to stop yourself from bringing up your husband's name.
Oh.
He said, I know that if we are going to be together, it's me, you, and him. And I know I get this version of you because of the way he loved you. And I didn't get this Tiffany unless he was here. So I'm grateful for him. And I don't ever want you to think that you can't bring him up. And I said, oh, that's when I kind of cracked open a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, because I was just
needed
like,
that.
okay, you know, I needed a place where I can safely.
A safe space.
Yes, to love my husband still, but also to be open to someone else. And somebody might be like, well, if you really love your husband, then you wouldn't be. And that's not true. Imagine you have a kid. Like, I can imagine, like, you know, you have your first child. You think to yourself, my heart can never get bigger. Because how could it? Like, I've heard, like, I have not given birth, but I've heard mothers say, like, you know, your first kid, you're like, it cracked me all the way open. And then you have your second. You don't say, well, child. Because what happens,
gone.
yes, right? But what happens is the unique thing about love is that the more you love, it expands your capacity for more love. Mm-hmm. So me being able to love my husband so well and be loved by him so well, it expanded my capacity that I can love someone as well.
And when we were having girl talk about this, you were saying that one of the things you wanted to get out to people is that there is life after grief.
Yes.
And I love how you're positioning. It's not like life after, it's just embracing
Yes.
all of it.
Yes.
Because
I'll never not be grieving.
Yeah.
Right.
And you also said it's important to set expectations.
Yeah. So one of the things I like most about him is that we talk about everything. But we can have the hard conversations gently. We do like a monthly check-in to say, how are you feeling? Do you feel connected? You know, like we read books together. He's like really well read. He's got his master's, really smart. And so I really love the fact that we can connect. So you have to look for what you're wanting. Like for some women, like for almost every man that I date, just because of the success of my business, I'm going to make more. Mm-hmm. You know, like there are some men that, you know, that reached out and wanted to date who did make more than me.
Right.
But that's not as much.
It's
if I'm
not
being
all it's
honest.
about, right.
Because girl, you know, we be making
Yeah.
bank around
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But despite that, I just wasn't interested. Because there wasn't a kindness there wasn't this gentleness, there wasn't this space to grieve and to be myself. There wasn't. So I know all the girlies be like, I want me a millionaire dude. I'm like, I've dated some of them and y'all can have it.
And Tiffany, one of my friends told me, she was like, I wish I had money so I could date who I went to.
Women can conduct themselves
Somebody told me
differently.
that,
Yeah, because for me,
I'm not out here fighting for my life.
yeah, because here's the thing. If I was a single mom with 2 jobs
Right.
and trying to figure out, honestly.
You'll date differently.
I would have to. If I was still preschool teacher Tiffany making $35,000 a year, it would look different. Mm-hmm. But for me, I do not need, my husband made significantly less than me, you know?
But
so,
he helped you get
Yes,
where you
right.
are. So tell that story.
Yes.
You know
So
the one I'm talking about. Tell that story.
yeah, well, for me, I mean, like when I first met Jarrell, I was a preschool teacher. He was a maintenance man in the building. And I remember I was just starting to think about the Budgetnista, and he was like, you should do it, yo. Like, you know what? Because Jarrell was very Newark. And he was like, oh my God, he worked for housing. He was like, we just had this dude talk to us about money and housing. He was boring. Not you, babe. You could do it. So it really pushed me
He was your
forward.
hype man right
Yes,
there.
he really was. Oh my God. I remember, like, I would forget. I was like, you know, Deja Vu. I was like on her show. And he called me while I'm on the show talking about, I hear you on the show. I'm like, I'm live, sir.
Yeah. Stop. Why you calling me during the show?
So he was my ultimate hype man. And I remember I was down bad, and I was just kind of like, the business was just starting to take off a little bit. And we were grown by the time we started really dating in my mid 30s. And he was like, you should like just live with me. And I was like, well, okay, we can split rent. He was like, no, when I look like you splitting rent and splitting bills when I'm already paying them. Mm-hmm. Just come live with me. And so even though, because he worked for housing, we lived on campus, I think rent was like 9 something. So it wasn't like a tremendous amount of money, but not having to worry about that. I don't think, so many men think you have to have a ton of money in order to provide and support and protect. That's not true.
Right.
Like Jarrell was really good at figuring out ways, like you come stay with me. I might not say, here's some money to pay your rent, but I will pay my rent and you can live here. You ain't got to worry about it. Mm-hmm. Like every time I went on a trip to speak or whatever, I didn't have to touch not one bag.
Right.
You know, it was like,
Right.
I'm going to bring it to the, you know, like that was so, when I landed, you good? Where you at? What you doing? You know, like I knew he would.
He got you.
I mean, always. He would say this thing where like, can't nothing touch you before going through me. you know? And so like, but that's what I mean. And this
Right.
is a man who continued to work for housing and, you know, was a super, but I don't know that he ever made over $60,000, $70,000 with the average black man.
And you said you turned down the noise on that when people were like,
Yeah, because people would tell you, here's the thing, women who are looking for someone, you get to decide what you need because social media will have you alone.
Right. Absolutely.
Alone. I'm not saying you should not date the bus driver. You should date the bus driver. I don't care, girl. What
It's
do
all an
you-
individual
Yes.
decision based on what you want
Yes.
to do in your life.
Yes. And
that
I would have
nobody else
missed
should
out.
do. There's no one size fits all
Not at all.
solution when it comes to dating.
No. And I would have missed out on the most amazing love possible. Like my husband's love healed me, you know, and I'm able to now be in partnership in an even better place because of that love.
Right.
You know, so yeah.
And
I
he
just-
would want this for you. He would want you to
Oh,
be
absolutely.
protected and happy.
You know, so I mean, but yeah, so now, yeah, I'm partnered, and you know, he is a beautiful, wonderful, smart person, and I get to grow on top of what I had before, and like, you know, just the communication is for me, and this is, I mean, I don't care what you have on your list, let communication be at the top of it to be
yeah,
able to talk
last
through.
thing, tell us some tips for having the money talk couples.
So yeah, we had it very early on, you know, which was like, here's my expectation that like you should be able to take care of yourself, and also too, like if we're gonna go out on a date, I actually didn't want anyone. Don't overextend yourself. Like, you know, like, oh, you paying for a $500 dinner. That doesn't make sense to me because
Right.
now I'm anxious and I know you anxious. Date within the range of what makes sense. You know, like if you can afford that we go to like a modest restaurant or whatever, okay. If it's like, yo, it's really tight right now, you know, let's go for a walk instead. I'm okay with that.
Right.
You know, so for me, what I find unattractive is financial irresponsibility.
Okay. Yes.
So that's what I find, because here's the thing. Let's just say, you know, you're dating for marriage and you rack up your credit card to impress me. So many women end up getting married and end up paying that credit card bill anyway.
Right. Right.
I don't want that.
Right. And I don't want us to get married and you're irresponsible with when it becomes our
Yes,
money.
yes.
You know,
So-
because people have such a hesitation talking about their financial circumstance. It is best to be open and
Yes.
honest.
But
It
it's
brings
here's
you
a-
closer.
Well, it's hard, right? Because not everybody wants to hear that. But that's why
Yeah.
you have to keep looking, you know? And like that honesty, that transparency, like we used to call it radical transparency. Like when he and I talk, I'm like, let's just be radically transparent. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's making you feel like when Jarrell was here, sometimes he would say that, like, sometimes I feel bad, babe, because you make so much more than me. I'm like, you know, how does that even work? Are you, you know, and I would have to be like, no, this is what you
Right.
bring.
Right.
You know, to the table. This is why it is the money part is easy. What you bring is so much better.
I wouldn't be able to go out and make this
Yes.
money if I didn't have the support
Because
of
I
you.
had a safety net to know that, like, I remember once he was like, if you want to quit Budgetnista, yo, I'll scrap metal. I will, you know, like, I'll work overtime. I knew that there was no hitting the floor. And so there are ways to show up for your partner, but both people have to be willing. The key to me, to truly connected, wonderful partnership is each person is working on themselves individually to be better. And then they are willing to work on the relationship together to be better.
I always say that two whole people coming together is the best that you can. It's not two halves make a whole, you know, so.
You know, so, yeah.
So this mid-year financial
Yay!
check,
I love
everything
it.
in it.
He's going to be like, did she talk about me on the show?
Yeah.
Don't get gas. You all right? No.
So when Tiffany is, her book is Made Whole, and as you can see, there's a lot more to money than dollars and cents made whole. For your mid-year financial check-in, you need a goal sheet, and she has made it really easy and has a free resource.
Yes.
Free resource for all of you.
You
Follow.
always got these free
You already
resources.
know.
I love it.
So it's just going to be super easy. Just find me, The Budgetnista, on Instagram and just DM me the word goals, and I will send you that free goal mid-year check-in resource sheet.
Yeah.
And just start, like we mentioned before, figure out where you were in the beginning of the year, write down what your goals are now, find you an accountability partner, have regular check-ins.
Okay.
We love our Budgetnista. Follow
Thank
her,
you so
DM her,
much, and I'm
type
so
goals.
happy. And you touched us today, honestly.
you.
Like, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Wealth Wednesday, everybody. And don't forget to follow Wealth Wednesdays on Instagram and to go to teamwealthwednesdays.com for our free newsletter.